My name is Mark Fowler, and I am the Director of Development for AutoDayTrade.com. This webinar is about the developer's version, which is only available as part of our Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. You may only acquire the developer's version through the campaign at the website that I'll publish at the end of this webinar. Now, I know most of you probably came here from there or have looked at that before, but I just want to make sure that you know what the parameters are here. You may be here just to have a look at what happens under the hood of a robot, or you may actually want to build your own robot. In either case, I don't think you'll be disappointed. But brace yourself, we're going to get pretty technical at times. Okay? Let's get started. The developer's version is used internally at AutoDayTrade.com for all of our robots. It has the most sophisticated money management of any trading platform. This we'll go into in depth today because it's one of the most important distinctions between our strategies and those of our competitors. Again, we use this only internally at this point. There are 50 plus parameters plus trails and stops depending on how you configure your robot. This gives you something like 3 times 10 to the 64th permutations to work with. But if you're a trader, you already know most of the parameters that work for you, so it's not that daunting a task. We do not release the settings for our robots, but each parameter has a usable default value, so you can start to work on your own robot with something. It was developed in C# and has an open indicator architecture. This means you can add your own indicators to the package. We'll go into this a little later in the webinar. It has been a huge investment, and I had to work hard with the other executives at AutoDayTrade.com to get it included as a reward in the Indiegogo campaign. The developer's version represents 500,000 lines of code, a $400,000 investment, and 3 years of work. I've been busy. Okay, here's what I hope to cover today. We're only going to touch the surface because we've only so much time. So let's get started. First, a discussion of the robot architecture and how it fits into the NinjaTrader implementation. NinjaTrader uses strategies and indicators, and we use NinjaTrader 7 and follow the general guidelines set forth by NinjaTrader. We extend the idea of an indicator as well as a strategy using features of .NET 4.0 to add security, inter-process communication, web service access, and so forth. Our ADT engine loads into NinjaTrader as a strategy. Then you load the strategy settings that define the robot you're currently working on. So ADT engine executes the strategy. It triggers trades, manages open trades, trails and stops, and handles money management. Indicators in our model provide trade commands, sometimes called triggers. They collaborate in communicating trade triggers back to the strategy. Our open architecture allows you to write your own indicators. We'll hit on this a little more later. Okay, on to one of the most important features of our development platform, money management. We utilize 5 major tracking systems to preserve your capital. A specialized system of fixed stops to cover the extreme conditions, traditional trailing stops implemented in an easy-to-use interface, managing and monitoring the chart profit and loss, monitoring the market while trade is in progress and reacting accordingly, and tracking system-wide profit and loss. First, fixed stops. As you will see, all trades execute in the context of fixed stops. You define them per position. We will discuss the hard stop, or what we call the brokerage stop, the fixed loss stop, and the hard target profit. This diagram represents the 3 fixed stops we utilize in the context of a trade. A trade is entered at the blue line, and the 3 scenarios shown indicate the fixed stop value. Number 1 is a traditional trade entry that chops and then drops. It hits the fixed stop loss and exits the trade with about 8 ticks of loss. This is the place for you to define the maximum amount you're willing to risk on a trade. Number 2, in the middle there, is a clear winning trade that shoots up to the hard target profit, where profit is taken right away. You see that there's a dashed line extending above the hard target profit? That's a separate money management feature that we're going to address later. Number 3 represents the day trader's nightmare. Your computer crashes, the internet goes down, your broker connection fails, or a number of other really bad scenarios cause you to lose contact in the middle of a trade. The brokerage stop was established at the beginning of the trade to cover these scenarios. While the total possible loss is pretty big, as it's always bigger than the fixed loss stop, it's better than waiting on hold with your broker so you can ask her to kill the trade. Now on to the more traditional trailing stops. We've heard that people are intimidated enough by NinjaTrader's ATM implementation to not use it regularly. That's why our interface replaces NinjaTrader's ATM. As you will see, trailing stops exist in the context of fixed stops. You will define trailing stops for each position. Here you can see, first, just how easy they are to define, and second, how they exist in the context of the fixed stops. Because these are easier to enter, you're actually more likely to use them. Okay, on to management of the chart profit and loss. Everybody provides some type of chart level profit taking and loss limiting, but we take it to a whole new level. We add to the traditional profit target a trailing profit target, and our loss limit tracking is exceptional. We also provide profit target driven trails, which I will describe in a minute, along with the ability to define the time scope of a chart profit and loss using optional resets for each trading session. During a trade, we monitor the profit target. If the profit target is exceeded after part of the trade closes, then the other position trailing stops bump up to the current price minus 1 tick. This assures that the profit is maintained without actually closing the trade. Before a trade, the profit target limits the number of contracts that can be entered. It checks the fixed loss stop in each position to determine how many contracts could be complete losers and still not fall below the profit target. The trailing profit target redefines the profit target following a trade that exceeds the profit target. It's specified in number of contracts. In a series of profitable trades, it increases the profit target to keep from losing hard-won profit in future trades. Essentially, it drags the profit target up behind it as your profit increases, thus preventing you from falling below the new profit target in future trades. The loss limit. Everybody wants to manage his or her losses. If you're in the middle of a trade and your unrealized profit and loss plus your realized profit and loss falls below the loss limit, all trades are closed at market immediately. Before entering a trade, it looks at the loss limit, calculates the number of contracts by reading the fixed loss stops to determine how many contracts can be complete losers and not fall below the loss limit, and then it enters that many contracts for a new trade. Profit target driven trails. This uses an extremely conservative trailing stop of 1 tick on open positions instead of just closing the trade. What this refers to is when you create a fixed profit target for a given position and it hits it. Remember that diagram earlier on with the cyan line that turned to a dashed line when it exceeded the fixed profit target? Instead of just closing the trade at that point, it bumps the trailing stops up to 1 tick below the current price and keeps it there, so that if the price is shooting up, it actually follows the price up before closing the trade when it takes a break and comes back down. This allows riding out a fast-moving market to even more profit. This is used in two ways. During trade that touches the position's hard target profit, that's what I just referred to, and also if you close a single position of 3 or so in a given trade and you have exceeded the chart profit target, then it bumps up the trailing stops of the other positions. In addition, there's an optional reset of the chart profit and loss for each session. We haven't gone into sessions yet, so you haven't seen it yet, but the chart profit target and the loss limits may be reset at the start of any trading session. This allows you to trade the London and New York sessions as if they were separate days while leaving your robot running all the time. You may have chart profit target and loss limits that are only a few hours long or run for a whole week. Okay, let's talk about market monitoring. The proprietary market monitoring features of our developers version really preserve capital during a trade, and that's what we're all about in trading. Optionally, you get to choose one of your indicator lines that you know would indicate a market reversal if it were crossed, and it automatically closes out trades when the price action crosses over before they become big losers. It overrides all trailing and fixed stops. Another feature that we provide is called anti-linger. You can optionally kill trades that fail to move quickly off their initial trailing stop, indicating a possible move in the wrong direction or just a lazy market. It lets you reset the robot before much loss can occur. It's especially useful in fast markets with a 5 or 10-second bar. Okay, we're the only NinjaTrader trading platform provider that offers a system-wide view of P&L across all your charts and strategies. You define your system-wide profit target and loss limit in the console outside of all robots. When robots are running, the current status is shown in detail and summary form in the console. Each robot in turn shows the system-wide status in the NinjaTrader tool strip. And you can see both those pictures here. The one in the middle of the screen is our global strategy console, and it's showing open and former strategies in the list on the right and what their open and closed positions are. And on the left, it shows the summary of all the things that have been going on so far that day. In the bottom, it shows the upper corner of the robot running in NinjaTrader and that the console profit target has been reached. This concludes our discussion of money management in AutoDayTrade.com's developers version. You can see that by combining fixed stops, trailing stops, extremely detailed management of chart profit targets and loss limits, with market monitoring and system-wide profit and loss, we've created a system that best preserves your capital and best maximizes your profit. Okay, still with me? I'm now going to discuss indicators more in depth. We implemented indicators differently than any other trading platform, and it's really important that you understand the differences. Here's a picture of an indicator definition in the Strategy Management console. You can see that the Fib Pro Micro is selected, and there are a bunch of options that can be set for it down below. And here's a picture of that indicator in action in the robot. Note the aqua-colored box in the lower right? It doesn't look very impressive, but all those options specified in the prior image are set up to drive what that indicator does and how it reports price action. I'm going to show you how indicators in our platform drive the trade trigger decision. Then I'll introduce our proprietary volume and thermodynamic indicators, along with a quick note on other indicators included in the developer's version. Finally, I'll describe how you may add your own custom indicators that will fit seamlessly into the developer's version platform. Okay, now this is important. Indicators drive the trade trigger decision in the robot. Each indicator is programmed to reach a decision on trading independent of all other indicators. What's shown here are the critical decision parameters of one of our indicators. So stick with me here. Since you may use a variety of indicators, and each indicator provides its own trade decision, The robot uses a trigger definition to decide when to enter long or short trades. A trade is triggered based on a collaboration of indicator decisions as shown in the picture. Indicators may be included, excluded, or forced to participate by checking the appropriate boxes. The robot uses the required qualifiers to trade parameter to see how many indicators must agree before it enters a trade. Further, one indicator is selected to deliver a trade entry price to the robot. The picture here says, in essence, use trade decisions from all 4 available indicators, as shown by the checkbox before each one, where only 3 of them are required to agree, as indicated in the required qualifiers to trade field. But one of the 3 must be the volume indicator. And when a decision is reached, ask the FibPro macro indicator for a price at which to enter the trade. Pretty cool, huh? This allows the ultimate in flexibility and accuracy in defining how your robots enter trades. Now on to describing one of the most important indicators in our developer's version, the volume indicator. We use it with some permutation of settings in every one of our robots. We're only going to touch on the highlights that make it so powerful, but you'll see how flexible and powerful it really is. First, you get to specify the minimum volume at which you're willing to enter a trade. You may set it as a % of some number of bars back from the current bar. You NinjaTrader users know exactly what that means. Or you may clear the checkbox and make it a fixed amount. Same with the threshold volume as shown on the right. The settings pictured here say, in essence, the volume at the current bar must at least exceed 100% of the average volume over the last 10,000 bars and exceed 200% of the volume over the last 50 bars. If you wanted a fixed minimum instead of a %, you would clear the checkbox and it would say instead, the volume at the current bar must at least exceed 100 and exceed 200% of the volume over the last 50 bars. That kind of setting allows the threshold to be flexible while keeping you completely out of a really slow market. That said, we found that specifying volume only in the context of a bar kept us out of trades that we should really have gotten into. The concept of volume interpolation is described in a separate document that we'll not try to present today. If you want to understand it with the information here, just imagine that the drawing on the right is a 15-second bar that reaches the threshold volume of 150 in the last microsecond before the bar closes. Normally, you would never get into a trade in that bar. Interpolation, however, lets us get into trades early by predicting that the bar will reach the threshold and taking action on that. Okay, this is our thermodynamic indicator. We call it that because it looks like a natural gas flame building and cycling between hot and cold, which are actually the long and short predictors. It's that section in the second panel with the red, yellow, and blue crosses and dots. It has multiple internal indicators to determine market convergence at varying look-back periods. You must acquire the developer's version to learn more about this indicator, however. The developer's version includes quite a few other indicators that we use or have used in our robots. In addition, you'll receive any indicators we develop in the next year. Okay, just a little about building your own custom indicators. I know several of you are interested in this aspect of the developer's version. It's actually pretty easy. When you acquire the software, I'll send you a slim 5-page document along with some sample code showing you how to build your own fully integrated indicator. When you are done, you'll be able to specify its settings in the console, just like all the other indicators, have it collaborate in the trade decision, as shown in the picture here, and display on the chart appropriately. In other words, it's exactly the same as all of our indicators when you're done, and it's pretty straightforward to build. Just a couple more topics, and I'm going to really fly through this one. The Strategy Management Console is a Windows application that helps you choose or create a strategy, choose and set up the indicators, set up trade triggers, use the ATM visualizer for trails and stops, set profit and loss parameters, and use the session editor to schedule the robot. We'll run through those screens next. You manage all your strategies on the Strategy Organizer tab. You can see there are quite a few options for manipulating strategies, including adding a new one, editing one that already exists, and so forth. We're going to focus on editing an existing strategy. If you click on the Edit button, a new form opens allowing you to edit the strategy parameters. The first thing to define is the indicators your strategy is going to depend on. When you click the Add button, a list of available indicators will appear, and you choose them in any order. You would then set the trade signal options, colors and lines, and indicator parameters according to what you want to accomplish in your robot. You can set the visual interface for each indicator separately, so you can see on the chart which indicators are calling for trades. Then you set up triggers that cause trades to execute in the robot. We discussed this process earlier in the presentation. You set the limit order parameters here, and you would also set up the visual interface so you can see on the chart when each type of trade is triggered. You go on to use the ATM visualizer under the Contract Management tab for trails and stops, as we already covered. You also set the reversal and anti-linger options on this form. Here's where you set up the chart profit target and loss limit parameters, as we discussed earlier. Note the profit target trail contracts entry. That's what we talked about in the P&L section, where the preserved profit target will trail up behind the actual profit, in the case of what's pictured here, by 3 contracts. And this is the session editor where you indicate when the robot is to trade. There are a couple of parameters here we have not covered. The time zone lets you specify everything in the robot according to the time zone of the market you are interested in, like say New York. When you run it in a different time zone, the robots adjust accordingly. The Close All Positions parameter always closes any open trades at the time indicated, so you do not carry margin to trades overnight. Refresh Strategy lets your robot receive updates to the strategy at predetermined times. That's it for today on defining the robot. Now I'm going to spend a few minutes showing you how to run the monster you have built. It's really pretty easy. You specify the strategy, optionally modify indicator parameters, and use the NinjaTrader controls to start trading. After you open a chart in NinjaTrader, you specify the strategy in the ubiquitous parameter grid. Everyone who's used NinjaTrader has seen the parameter grid. The console must be running before you start this process. So open that chart in NinjaTrader. It can be any time-based bar chart. Click on ADT Engine, choose New, enable the strategy, and then choose a strategy from the drop-down. This list comes from the Strategy Management Console, where you set up the strategy in the first place. After the strategy loads, you may modify indicator parameters by showing the appropriate tool strip for each indicator. You just click on the ADT button at the right end of the NT tool strip and select them in turn. The picture here shows none of them shown, and then all 4, Thermodynamics, Volume Pro, FibPro Micro, and FibPro Macro. Again, if you created your own custom indicator here, it would show up here as well, and its settings will be editable while the robot runs too. The controls you see in the robot match the settings back over in the console. If you look at the picture, you can see over in the console we defined the threshold volume and the minimum volume settings, and those are reflected while the robot is running. While the robot's running, however, you can change all those values to change the behavior of the robot while it's operating. This unprecedented feature lets you see immediately the result of changing indicator parameters. Finally, you'll want to use the controls in the EngineTrader tool strip to start the robot by clicking on the green button, override various robot settings, enter long or short trades at market, bid, or ask, create long or short stop orders, or create straddles and reversals. These topics are too big to fit into this overview, so we'll just stop here. Okay, we got through robot architecture, money management, indicators, strategy management console, and running the robot.